A dish best served on the Rock of Gibraltar in front of 500 fans after a week on a cruise ship. It worked for Dillian Whyte. He certainly made short work of Alexander Povetkin, stopped the Russian in the fourth round of their rematch 7 months after he himself was laid out cold. This is After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show with me, Martin Domin, with my two guests who, to be honest, have disappointed me this morning. I was expecting sunglasses, cocktail on the deck of the...
I got a smoothie from the breakfast buffet. That's about as wild as it goes in there.
I have a very red head, so, you know.
It's the small victories. You two have, of course, been in Gibraltar this week. Before we come to the fight, it looked like what we've come to expect from Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, a very slick operation. How was it out there?
It was phenomenal. It's just, yeah, nobody does it better. That's just the truth of it. It's just to think of it, it was quite incredible. But to actually be able to see it in person, just that, you know, everything from, you know, just how much that everyone loved us being here, and just it's been like a holiday. That it sort of felt like the boxing got in the way a little bit. You know, that's how you almost forgot that you had to do some work while you were over here. But yeah, it was great, and I don't know whether we'll be over here again. You know, but it was, and for the boxers, it's something that will stick in their memory forever.
It was so slick that we almost forgot that it was in the middle of a pandemic and that we weren't allowed off the ship, and that, you know, that this whole operation, it was just, you almost forgot you're on a boat as well. It's just sort of felt like an old fight week, and obviously everyone's mixing it because in the bubble everyone's tested numerous times, so everyone's sort of allowed to interact like the old days. I mean, how they managed to pull it off with chartering a flight for everyone and getting the testing done, the amount of red tape from both sides, it's just staggering, really. And I mean, we're talking now Sunday morning, so you would say that, you know, it's all done and dusted and complete. I'm sure something could still go wrong, but it's just been like, I don't know how they managed it. And I mean, just have fans back was just I forgot how good it is, but also how different boxing is with no fans in those bubbles, because we just sort of got used to it, but it ain't right, is it?
No, definitely not. And boxing, as much as people will mock and hate Sweet Caroline at 10:30 on a fight night, let's be honest, it does add something to it. And I can only imagine if you look at the first fight between Whyte and Povetkin, walking out, as good as fight camp was, as impressive as that setup was as well, walking out into a garden, an empty garden, a very eerie garden, compared to even 500 fans, you could tell even on TV how different it was and how good it was. And, you know, Eddie keeps saying that hopefully what his May 15th show, I think, will be his planning for that to be his last one with no fans in the UK. We can only hope that is indeed the case. Let's turn to the fight itself. We said before, Declan and I said before we came on, but it wasn't that different a fight to the first fight in terms of Dillian Whyte was dominant. This time he put Alexander Povetkin away, and Povetkin really didn't pose much of a threat. Yeah,
I think the difference. Well, he didn't pose much of a threat in actual in results and what he was trying to do, but there was still a fear every time that he went to engage with Dillian Whyte that it could be it. I think with Dillian, when he goes for it, when he decides to try and hurt you, he's all in. There's no half measures with him. So he swings from the rafters when he throws that hook and when he comes with the right hand. So with that, there's great success and great results with it, but also there can be massive implications the other way around. And I think, you know, so when he does throw that big right hand, he dips the head down, he puts all his body weight into it, but he almost throws some of those punches blind. And that means, you know, someone like Povetkin, who was trying to get in, just couldn't, luckily for Whyte, couldn't really get off. that's because. But what the difference from this fight from the first fight is the jab. And I know I kept going about the jab from the first fight, and after the first fight, it had to be heavier and fast and come back faster, and it did. Where he was flicking it in the first fight, I know a heavyweight can flick a jab and it's still a powerful weapon, but he really stepped behind it. You can see the influence there of Harold Knight, obviously, and that comes back from Emmanuel Stewart. They were all like really heavy on a solid left hand, and he used that. And then he took half a step back, and that just took away any counter attack that Povetkin could make. He just maintained that space all the time. So he'd throw a good jab, take half a step back. Povetkin would either fall short or be afraid to throw, and then Dillian would come back with the right hand. So all week he's been saying, I'm just going to go for it. It's a fight. It's a fight. I don't care what people say. I don't care what all the pundits have been saying. It's a fight, and I got caught. I'm still going to go for it. And he did. But just after the weigh-in, we had him on Sky Sports. We had a little bit of honesty from him. And he said, I am going to be aggressive, but I'm going to do it intelligently. I'm going to think about my work. And that was the first time that he sort of gave away a bit of his what they've been working on. And it showed last night.
How much, Declan? It's fine to say that physically it was a comfortable night, but how much of the issue really for Dillian was mental? I mean, no matter how much he said that being knocked out wasn't an issue, that it happens to the best of fighters, it still must be a difficult thing to deal with, and to then come back from, especially fighting the same man. Like you can only bring back some sort of bad memories getting in there again.
Yeah, but I actually spoke to Darren Barker yesterday, a couple of hours before we left for the arena, and he said that, yeah, he probably will. There will be gunshot. He'll be thinking about it, obviously, but as soon as he's in there and he lands a couple, maybe gets one back, actually he'll forget about it because the fight is there in front of him then. But I do think I agree with Barry that it was a good thing in the end because he was slightly more cautious, which totally then took away any hope that Povetkin had, which, let's be honest, in the end, that was all he had, was a puncher's chance, and not a very good one because he's smaller. We know what happened in the first fight, and he kept trying to do it. That slip inside the Dillian Whyte's jab, and obviously he came up through the middle in the first fight. He was trying to go around the top, and then from that position, he also throws that blind overhand right as well. So the little bit of caution was actually the key to winning. I mean, we've got to say Povetkin didn't look in good nick at all, did he? We'd mentioned about the COVID and everything else, and whether it was going to be a factor. I think something was a factor, and it's not a case that he got old overnight because he was 42 or whatever, 41 or whatever he is. That's not getting old overnight. That's just being old. And the chickens came home to roost a little bit, and like you say, it was quite similar to the first fight. Really, it just didn't have that big swing. I don't mean swing of the fist, but I mean that swing from one person winning to being out on his back. That didn't come and closed the show. And yeah, I mean, you can't take anything away from Dillian Whyte, but it wasn't the best Alexander Povetkin in the world. But he could have still come unstuck. There was still that little opportunity for Povetkin, but he didn't let him take it this time.
Is there an argument, Barry? I know if you'd gone back 9 months instead, offered Dillian Whyte 2 fights with Povetkin, 1 defeat, 1 win, he obviously wouldn't have taken it. But is there an argument now that he's had to go through 2 fights? He's made the adjustments, as you mentioned, and he comes out of this little series a better fighter.
Yeah, I think so, because I guess when you're winning all the time, since Joshua and just before that, you don't need to make changes because things are working for you. So you don't almost see your vulnerabilities because whatever happens at the end, you've got the guy out of there, or so he didn't look back at the Derek Chisora fights and think, actually, I wasn't boxing great, but I got him out of there. He just seen, well, I got him out of there. And and this persona he has of being a tough guy, which he most certainly is, and you just live and feed off that and forget about it. So as much as your coaches are trying to tell you something, which I know Xavier Miller is to be fair to him, he don't get enough credit. He's quite a smart trainer, even though he's a quiet voice. Dillian probably doesn't listen because okay, but I'm gonna just knock him out, so don't worry about it. But you need to make an adjustment. So getting Harold Knight in might be exactly the same information, but sometimes you just need a different voice. And so that defeat meant that they had to go searching for something else. And I think with Harold Knight and luckily, Xavier Miller had enough dignity, I guess, to lower man in. You know what I mean? Lower man into his camp without kicking up fuss, and I think they worked quite well together. So yeah, luckily for that. But yeah, I think he's a better fighter now, more rounded fighter, and again now, and he's back on track. That's the most important thing. He's back on track to where he wants to go, and I think he'll get a world title fight now in the next anywhere from 5 to 7 years.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? Because if you go back to August, then in theory, at least, he was that one win away from setting himself up for a fight with Tyson Fury. Now, whether you believe Tyson Fury is going to fight Anthony Joshua anytime soon or not, those belts are tied up. So, Declan, Dillian Whyte's never been a man to sort of sit on the sidelines and wait. But should he wait until, say, the end of the year when maybe the belts do sort of break up a little bit? If not, who does he look at next?
No, I think you've got to look at Dillian Whyte. Not only has he had to deal, like all professional boxers, with COVID and the sort of weird year that everyone's had, but also he was knocked bang off track by the defeat. So he doesn't want to hang around now. But you're right. If all goes well, he won't be boxing Joshua Fury for 18 months. Okay, if it doesn't happen in the summer, who knows? Maybe the door opens for him this summer. Maybe Fury wants to fight. He's WBC champion, and Dillian Whyte's got the interim title. Maybe that's a fight that we see. If they don't manage to get Joshua Fury done for the summer, which is not out of the question. I spoke to him yesterday in his dressing room, which was like a weird cricket changing room or something, and he said he wants to fight Trevor Bryan for the WBA regular belt. He says the same belt that David Haye held. There's fights out there for him. There's people in America. It looks like America is the plan for him next, because they want to build him there. It's a whole new revenue stream, the zone, all of that sort of stuff. Deontay Wilder's a target, but who knows what he's going to do. So in answer to your question, no, I don't think he should wait around and hope for a belt to fall in his lap sort of thing. I think he's got to go and keep fighting, keep making money. And then if he gets the call, in he goes. And he's outside of those 2 or 3 top guys. He's a commodity in the heavyweight division, isn't he? And he's put himself right back in the picture with that last night. So I think he should take advantage of that.
Well, and that's the thing, though. He can earn money. He doesn't have to be a world champion. Usually, you only really earn big money once you become a world champion. Well, he's earning millions without it. So he just needs a big, exciting fight to draw a crowd, and because he's a pay-per-view star now, that's what he is. But also, what's important is if you get you got to wait for Joshua and Fury to fight. And then they have the first fight. Then the second fight, the belts will most definitely get fragmented. They'll have to. They can't hold ransom for the belts for a couple of years. So he'll get a title shot at somebody else. But then he's still on that trail. He's still on that mission to try and prove he's the best, because no one, even if he is a belt holder, no one will regard him as the best, because it'll be the winner of Joshua Fury 1 and 2 who will be seen as the best. So he might have a belt. He might have all the belts. But still, they'll still say you're second or third. So the journey for him, he's searching. He wants to be the best. He wants to try himself at the best. So unless he boxes Joshua and Fury, as much money as he's earned and a fabulous career that he's had already, I think he's always going to be a little bit unfulfilled. I think he would generally accept if he lost to one of those, he would sort of be filled up and go, well, I got to what I wanted to get, and I tried and it didn't work. He seems like that sort of character. But I don't think he'd be happy having all the belts around his waist, but then 1 or 2 fighters who will deem better than him fighting their own little trilogy, possibly.
I mean, in an ideal world, and boxing is very rarely an ideal world, we do have a situation where if you section off Joshua and Fury, you could have a great little tournament, unofficial, official, whichever, to figure out who is, let's say, third best. Between it, you've got Wilder, you've got Ruiz, Whyte, Joe Joyce, Usyk, none of whom have fought each other as professionals.
That Ruiz fight, that's the one I would like to see most for Dillian Whyte. I think that's a great style matchup. Size-wise, it's good. Stories, people know about them both. I love that fight, but it's a good way. It would really be a good vehicle into America for him. He boxed in America on an undercard, a Terence Crawford undercard before, but I'd love that fight. I think there's also a little possibility of him fighting in China against Zhilei Zhang as well, which is you know, in years gone by, when you hear that from a promoter or something, you go, oh yeah, right. But actually, these weird fights and these weird destinations are actually far more likely than going to the O2 these days. So that don't rule that one out either. I think the point is there's exactly, it's not, and the amount of money you get over there in China, he's all about territories and all that sort of stuff. I think that he has a lot more options than you might think. And you're right. It's almost like, you know, when you got a horse race and you've got the two favourites, they offer a market outside of the favourites, that sort of job. It's like that. And the fact is that's still going to earn him money, and it's still going to add to his legacy, and it will prepare him, much like the Rivas fight did and the Chisora wins. It will prepare him as and when something big comes up. So, yeah, I mean, it's such a good division at the moment. Who would have thought it 10 years ago?
So speaking of Chisora, that's who he fights to win a Chisora and Parker. That's what happens next. Let's be honest, it does. You know, we don't want. I wouldn't want to see a third Chisora fight. Though the first two were entertaining, but that's what. And he might not want that, but they're going to say you'll learn more from that fight than you will from any other.
You might be right, but that would just, there would be a tinge of sadness to I mean, we don't need to see. I mean, I'd rather. I don't know. I just think there are so many options out there that I do hope they steer away from that. But you may well be right.
He's beaten them both. He's beaten them both already. I hope you're wrong, Barry. It doesn't happen often, but I hope you're wrong.
But they're on pay-per-view and they win. And if it's an entertaining fight, which Chisora might make it, then all of a sudden they've promoters, Gene and Eddie Hearn's a great one at selling a story and a byline about how they've reinvented themselves and they're better than they ever were before, and because they would do big numbers because they're Chisora's a well-known name and so is Sting. I would rather him go on, like you said, Declan, and what we'd all would, I think, as well as Martin, would rather see him challenge against someone like Ruiz, challenge himself against a guy who's been a world champion again, and see how he lands there. And also, he's just trying to do a better job than Joshua, and that's another important thing. Or fight Deontay Wilder if that could possibly be made, and do a better job than Fury if he can. I think that's important. That gives you some sort of context then about how good he is compared to them.
Does Dillian Whyte beat Andy Ruiz?
Yes, I think he might, but again, it's going to be another fight where he's going to be super disciplined. I think the reason I'd always sort of bet against Ruiz is that he is small, and now he's lost a load of weight. I'm not sure if that's going to help him. I mean, you think he's going to be more agile and faster and blah, 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 but you won't have that physical. I know it was a lot of fat around him, but it was still weight that he could lean on people at times. But he's a born fighter. He's boxed from a very young age, from a kid, and he takes a good shot, and that's something that might trouble Dillian, and maybe the speed. But I think Dillian started the show. If he can improve on what he did Saturday, he started to show the blueprint of how he's going to fight. He's still going to be taking risks, because that's his whole persona is about that. But I think if he can be disciplined in a long, hard jab, then I think I would fancy him, yes, but not confident.
But then I guess that's what we want, right? Those fights that are going to spark debate rather than saying, play it again.
Completely. And if you think as well, we don't really know what the best version of Andy Ruiz is, because that was an incredible, almost an anomaly of a night in Madison Square Garden, and then he didn't show up for the rematch. And he had a good fight with Parker. Many people thought he got the decision, or the decision was wrong, but we don't know what he's really got in the tank. And now he's fit. What's that going to do for it? I love that fight. I think it's a really good one, and I think it's a really good one for Dillian Whyte to go and quote unquote crack America, and then positions himself for either the winner of Fury Joshua or Wilder if he comes back. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure what the vibe is contractually and stuff like that. Whether Ruiz obviously boxed on DAZN before against Joshua, so in theory it should be an easy one to make, but these things rarely are.
Indeed. I'm assuming we don't want to see Povetkin Price again. We want to see Alexander Povetkin just sail off into the sunset now.
Yeah,
he's had a fantastic career. He really has. And from Olympic gold medalist, which was God, like 17 years ago, whatever, to being a world champion. And so he's had enough. And I think, if he would have lost the first fight, I think he would have called it a day. But the fact that he landed that fantastic shot and he got another payday. So, he's had a result, really. He had to take a few lumps for that result. But yeah, he's had a result financially, I think. So he finishes on a high, in another good fight. I think, you got to finish on a win, but almost every fight it doesn't. So yeah, he's had a good career, and he'll be thought of well. I think he will. He'll be thought of well. Not for just the Dillian Whyte loss or win, but for all the other stuff he done before that, which was much better. So yeah, let's call it a day. As much as he can always be a danger, it gets to a point where you're just a danger to yourself, and that's what we don't want to see.
Yeah, I rarely say it, but I hope I never see Alexander Povetkin in a boxing ring again.
Fair enough. That's pretty definitive. We will just touch on the undercard, a competitive one. Campbell Hatton made a winning points debut. It was an upset win for Nick Webb. Fabio Wardley dealt with Eric Molina as you'd expect him to deal with Eric Molina in the shape he was in. Michael McKinson with a good win over Chris Congo and Ted Cheeseman in a thrilling fight with JJ Metcalf. What was your highlight, Barry? What did you sort of pick out from the undercard?
Well, what I've been picking out all week, and I guess what Declan has and everyone has on the boat, is that Cheeseman and Metcalf was always going to be a great fight, and what a fight it was! It was just something else. I remember someone come up next to me and said, "What round are we on?" Because there's no ring card girls, and they don't say seconds out round thing. You don't hear it from where you are. I said round 25 because that's what it felt like. It felt like it felt like we should be seeing this in black and white on a cine film sort of thing. It was just unbelievable. Yeah, and the two lovely kids outside, that shouldn't matter for entertainment purposes, but they're two real lovely kids. You don't want to see them hurt or lose or anything. And I picked Metcalf to win. Although, I know Cheeseman better than Metcalf, but I picked Metcalf to win. I just thought that he had a bit more variety to his work. But Cheeseman boxed fantastic. I mean, he's been boxing better since the loss to Garcia for the European title, but he boxed brilliant. He really did. And then all of a sudden, he had Metcalf all over the place in the fourth round. And there was like 5 opportunities for the referee to step in. And just when he was looking like he was going to, Metcalf would just throw that 1 or 2 shots with nothing on him, just enough to say I'm okay. And the referee can step in if he's fighting back. And rightly so. And then after that, he won the 5th and the 6th, maybe. I'm not quite sure. But then he had a little bit of a run, and then he made the fight. All of a sudden, the fight was close going into the later stages, but fatigue plays his part, of course, and and Cheeseman got the win, and what a win for him, because he's had, not just in the ring, outside the ring, he's had a real tough time of it, and yeah, it was a great fight. It really was. It was a class. It felt like a small. Because it was 500 people in there. It felt like a small hall classic, and it was so good that the crowd didn't know who these kids were. To be honest. And they were on their feet and they were cheering and masks were coming off that they shouldn't have been. And it was phenomenal. It really was. It was unbelievable. I keep saying the same thing, but like that fight will live in my memory longer than any other.
He won a legion of fans, judging by Twitter. Obviously, it was on DAZN in America, and the Americans absolutely loved it. They love Cheeseman. They probably don't know his story, what he's overcome and stuff. And like Barry said, there's improvement since the Garcia fight, which was a total nightmare for him, to be honest. When you look back on it, a war, a real beating for long parts of it. I think that is obviously a huge win for him. A defeat there would have been really difficult to sort of get back to. And now he says he's the best at the weight in the division in the country. I'd love to see him against Anthony Fowler. One name that never gets chucked in with these fights, maybe he's just above it, is Liam Smith. Imagine Smith.
I think that's because they sort of see Liam Smith as beyond domestic, not involved. Yeah, that's all I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. But if he goes and beats Fowler, then the Smith fight is something. You're right. Smith wouldn't go, "Oh, I fancy fighting Cheeseman. That would do a lot for me." But Cheeseman, he's such an easy boxer to like and to enjoy watching because he puts his punches together. He's so honest, so hardworking. And I've got to as well say on that, in terms of the undercard, Michael McKinson, who he's what's that, 21 now. He's only got 2 stoppages. Look at the way he throws the backhand from weird angles. He bolos it, sticks it round the side. Basically, I mean, he obviously dropped Congo in the first round, and really changed the whole pattern of the fight, because then Congo was like, no thanks, don't fancy any of that. He calls himself the problem, and that is absolutely bang on. I mean, he is, forget fully paid up member, he is the chairman of the Who Needs Him club. Like, who wants to fight that guy? He's like a puzzle. He punches you really hard. You can't get near him. He's pulling faces. Great, like real good. And I know that a lot of people have known about him for a long time. You know, it's not like he's some sort of flash in the pan. He's been going a while. Been super confident all week. With, you know, his dad's here. His dad's his trainer. You know, their team on. You know, you can see when a team really fancies the job, and that's been the score with him. Just high level fight that was, wasn't it? And often that southpaw orthodox combination can be a bit of a tap fest with the lead hand. It wasn't that. It was, and for, I think it was the second fight on the card. So he sat there at like 7 o'clock watching that. It was, yeah, it was a treat. So massive shout out to McKinson. I thought that was a, you know, big breakout night for him.
And speaking of breakouts, what about Nick Webb? You know, really, yeah, he's coming as an opponent. They thought, 5 years ago, Nick Webb was not bad, but you know, he probably lacks confidence because he'd been knocked out twice, and you know, I was in this changing room before the fight, and I just said, listen, like the fight no one's put it on him before. I don't want to say credit for the win, but maybe I feel a little bit, maybe, you know, that's up to listen. That's up to them. I don't have to praise myself. That's up to Nick to praise me, though he should, but that's his choice. But yeah, and he did that. But he got Scott Welsh in his corner. Scott's going to tell him, but Scott, you know, that was Scott's game. You know, you put it on and make him feel it early, and he did. And Pfeiffer had no answer to it. And it was just a real stand-up win. So now all of a sudden he's got named. Like Babic is calling him out now, and you know, that's a fun fight. But either way, that keeps Nick in that little pool of heavyweights just below the top ones in the UK or UK based. That you can get entertaining fights, and he's back, and that's the wonder of boxing. One good win at any level can put you back in the mix with no, rather than on the scrap heap, because 2 bad wins or 3 bad wins and you disappear. So yeah, it was great. And Campbell Hatton, I think, was, you know, it's a lot of pressure on the kid, and we've put it on. If I call myself easy now as well, we put it on him. But you have to. It's inevitable. Otherwise, you don't get on these bills if it's not that. But he tried too hard. He boxed okay. He boxed fine. And if his name was Campbell Smith or whatever, then you would have gone, he did all right, that kid. He struggled at the end a little bit, but he boxed okay. Because he's Campbell Hatton, he's going to get loads of criticism because he never knocked the guy out, and he ran out the gas a little bit at the end. Just because he was hitting the guy with everything, and the guy didn't move. That's something you got to learn about the pro game. It's not everyone falls over under pressure. But it was a fantastic learning fight for him, and he's up and running. That's the most important part.
Yeah, I remember Conor Benn's first fight. Maybe his first few fights were you know, erratic at times as well, and it just needs to be. You know, I think he's probably in the best place to be guided. There will be plenty of opportunities to fight. You don't have to stick him one in the middle of the card. Stick him one earlier on. And I'm sure in Manchester he'll probably fight higher up the card at some point soon. But as much as we often, or I certainly often complain about fighters being moved too slowly, this is one where, as Eddie Hearn said, give him a couple of years, 8 fights a year, and let's just wait and see.
That's the key, and he's got enough dates that he can do that with Campbell Hatton. And speaking from my point of view, you know, as a freelance journalist, he's been absolute manna from heaven, because everyone wants to have a slice of it. But I know for a fact now, his next fight, no one's going to be that interested, because we've done the Campbell Hatton thing now. So now it will just dip out for a bit. And that's exactly what he needs to do. And the same thing happened with Conor Benn. I mean, to be fair, Conor Benn was still pretty, you know, the spotlight was still on him a lot. But I feel like with Campbell, they're going to be able to just take it even slower than they did with Conor Benn. He said he's spoken to Conor. He says that that's really the blueprint. There are a lot of parallels, both very raw, both very young when they turned over. I think it could be fun. It's going to be fun, but learning on the job is the hard bit, isn't it? That's the hard thing to do. And that opponent was durable. He'd only been stopped once on his debut, and I think, you know, he was disappointed afterwards, to be honest, Campbell. And that's a good sign, actually, that he didn't. He thought he wasn't happy with his performance. So if he'd come out and he's like, yeah, you know, really thought he'd nailed it, then that would be a concern. But he's such a humble, level-headed kid for the amount of like spotlight and pressure on him. I've never seen a debutant do so much media, and it will stand him in good stead in one way. But it's ridiculous. Like, it was ridiculous, and you know, as a member of the media, I've got to, part of the problem, but it will fade off now. The debut's done, and he can just crack on.
The thing is, how many kids have you seen in their debut and go, "Oh, this kid's going to be a star," and he's failed, dramatically failed. Yeah. And how many kids have you been underwhelmed with, or didn't even remember seeing their debut, and all of a sudden, or didn't even know they had their debut, and then all of a sudden, in 3 years later, 4 years later, they're superstars or champions of the world or whatever they are. So you don't know how it's going to develop. The chances of anyone being a world champion are very slim, and the chances of someone coming from that much success in one family are also very thin. So he's got a lot to do, but let him develop. We don't know what he's going to be. The media train's going to push around him, and he's going to get lots of criticism on social media and praise, of course, in certain fights. But ultimately, until he's been a pro for 2 or 3 years, you just don't know where he's going to go. And that's just like it was with Conor Ben. You wouldn't have seen where he was now. He's looking really good now, but a couple of years ago, you thought he just hasn't. He lacks experience. He lacks something. But you just don't know.
It's certainly going to be a fun journey. And speaking of journeys, I know you two are desperate to get back to the UK. So I don't want to hold you up from.
We're back on the plane. Back on the plane today, and then we're just released into the public. We're in quarantine for ages, testing every 2 minutes. But yeah, it's been a fun one, and I think we'll be back. I think this is only the second professional boxing show they've ever done here, and I feel like we'll be back at some point, and everyone will be able to come. And Gibraltar, man, it's the future.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. So I just seen a customs boat by here. Declan, you better hide your stash, mate.
That sounds like a good point to leave it. We'll be back next weekend after Carl Frampton's bid to become a 3-weight world champion, Ireland's first, when he takes on Jamel Herring. That's in Dubai, Saturday night. Please do join us then. And until then, do take care.